Back in 2019, Mojang decided that it was time to change every single texture in Minecraft. I still don't know why they decided to do this. It seemed like a terrible move brand-wise, considering that a lot of the Minecraft textures have become extremely iconic due to just how long they'd been in the game for. Like the logs, iron ingots, golden apples, the diamond sword even. All of these were just so recognizably Minecraft that, like I said before, made it all the more weird that they just decided to change them on a whim. Another weird thing about the change was that they said that they wouldn't be changing textures that they deemed too iconic, and yet the only one that they left was the creeper, which, well, yes, the creeper is definitely one of, if not the most iconic Minecraft mob. Apparently, items like diamonds weren't on the same level despite being on like half the game's merchandise. Whatever the reason though, the complete texture overhaul was implemented with the 1.14 Village and Pillage update on April 23rd, 2019. Now, regardless of what you think of the new textures, I think we can all agree that perhaps just suddenly changing the entire look of a game isn't exactly the smartest idea. Yes, I know that as far back as 2017, they were rolling out beta versions of the new textures for feedback, but no matter how much people tried to tell Mojang that they didn't really want the textures to change, Mojang was adamant that the change was happening. But being the good game devs that they are, they understood that not everybody was going to be happy that the entire game's art style just changed overnight. So they offered a built-in resource pack that completely reverts all the new textures called Programmer Art. This pack was the perfect solution. It not only reverted all the texture changes for people who don't like the new stuff, but is also built in, meaning that even if you've never installed a resource pack before, you can still use this. It's great. And turning the pack on in 1.14 is a very solid experience. Nothing really looks out of place in the world, except for a few things here or there, like a couple flowers. The only thing I'd really say is weird are the villagers. In the Programmer Art texture pack, they have this green hood now that they never had before, and also don't wear their old robes. An interesting thing about the green hood, though, is that it's actually a bug caused by an oversight related to villager profession textures. They have no Programmer Art variants, causing the villager texture to default to the old villager.png texture, which, as you can see, was used for nitwits before 1.14 and has the green hood in its texture. Nitwits never had a green hood though, even back then, and that's because the green hood part was disabled. Regardless of why the hood appears on the texture, there is still a point to be made that this pack is unfinished and quite literally buggy. Whether it be new blocks not getting OG style textures or literal bugs causing unexpected things to happen, it does make the pack feel weird to use. Thankfully though, in 1.14, it's not really that bad. You can certainly just learn to live with it because the contrasting styles aren't extremely noticeable, since the only blocks that have new textures in Programmer Art are the workstations, blocks that barely generate naturally anyway. So overall, despite a couple flaws, the pack is still a pretty solid experience to use in 1.14. And then the Nether update released. Yeah, so Programmer Art is now unusable if you want to have an art-consistent game. It's at this point where Programmer Art is very clearly just being ignored. No new OG style textures were added for 1.14 and 1.15 blocks, items, and mobs, and to make it worse, the 1.16 stuff was also ignored, which is a big problem considering that this stuff naturally generates in huge quantities. The Warped and Crimson Forests are disgusting. The least they could have done was maybe make the bottom netherrack texture of the Nylium use the old one. You know what though? Maybe they just forgot. After all, the new textures had been out for a year at this point, and lots of people probably just decided to embrace the new ones, so the old ones gradually became less and less popular. Never mind, they just didn't f***ing care. Yeah, so Crying Obsidian was the only block and still stands to this day, 5 years later, as the only new thing that was ever given a proper Programmer Art texture. Why Crying Obsidian, you ask? Well, it's not like they consciously decided to make a new Programmer Art texture for Crying Obsidian just for this update. No, it's because Crying Obsidian had a texture for over 9 years at that point. If you're unaware, way back in 2011, Notch originally planned for Crying Obsidian to be added to the game as the way to set your spawn in beta 1.3. The idea was eventually dropped though in favor of beds, and that's what ended up making it into the game. The texture for it remained in the terrain sprite sheet though until beta 1.5, when it was overwritten with the top of the side grass texture that allowed for grass sides to also be colored by biome. So I guess the reason they weren't adding new Programmer Art textures wasn't because they forgot or didn't care, it's because they just didn't really feel like making new textures for it. If the pack was this bad after just 2 updates though, how bad is it now after 8? Pretty bad, I'm not gonna lie. There's so many new blocks now that naturally generate an entire new biomes that completely clash the art styles together that it's starting to get out of hand. What's more, this pack hasn't been touched in years. The villagers still have their green hoods, the netherrack on Nylium still hasn't changed, and things like the pale garden wood leaves remain unchanged. Mojang actively ignores the Programmer Art texture pack, and that's the sad thing. If you voice your negative opinion about the new textures, people will tell you, just use a resource pack. But the resource pack is only half-assed and technically broken. It's been up to us, the community, to fix it. Packs like Programmer Art Continuity and Programmer Art Ultimate are wonderful packs that have taken up the mantle to keep Minecraft's classic textures alive, to keep the simplistic, distinctly Minecraft style alive. But the sad truth is, Mojang doesn't care. Let's be real for a second and ask, why should they? The Programmer Art style is not the direction that they want the game to go in, and probably so few people use the pack that it would be a waste of time to even focus on it. That would make sense, but there are so many things that have been added over the years that seem like wastes of time in the same vein that adding new Programmer Art textures would be. Things like changing the ore textures, changing the potion colors, adding the ability to eat in creative, changing the cloud textures, adding auto jump to a PC game, changing the enchantment glint, changing the volume of specifically the grass break sound to be distractingly lower than everything else. At this point, why would it be a waste of time to update the Programmer Art texture pack? Why should we, as a community, have to pick up the slack? Mojang, if you're not gonna offer something officially that players want, fine. The community can do it themselves. But when you add something like the Programmer Art pack that is designed to cater to that specific group of players who want it, it is now your job to maintain it. Don't forget that this is an official feature, and because of that, it deserves just as much attention and care as any other feature. The fact that this pack is clearly half-assed and ignored will feel like a big middle finger to players who prefer it, because you're actively telling them that you don't care what they think. Suddenly, it's not so surprising why some players are so keen to call Mojang lazy. Honestly, I and probably many other people would be a lot happier if they at least slightly altered the textures that don't work with the current Programmer Art pack, like changing the netherrack part of the Nylium texture, and also fixing issues with the pack like the green hood on villagers. I'm just so thankful that Minecraft has the community it does. There's so many passionate people out there who feel the same way about the lack of effort put into preserving Minecraft's original art style. I myself am not a huge Programmer Art head. I love the old textures and old Minecraft in general, don't get me wrong. Like, I'll have the occasional phase where I use it for a while, but honestly, the lack of new OG style textures really takes me out of it and makes me want to switch off because it straight up looks bad in some spots by no fault of its own. Our community is absolutely wonderful, but I fear that if one day community-made content ceases to exist by volition of the parent company, without a properly maintained pack, Minecraft's original and beloved art style will fade away. Lost to time, gone forever. Mojang, please fix your Programmer Art texture pack for us, the community. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, okay?